YouTube, what the crap's going on? HeirofCarthage back in Total War Warhammer. Appreciate those who joined me on the live streams yesterday. Technically it's still today, but by the time you're watching this, it was yesterday, so appreciate it. And if you haven't seen them yet, go back and check it out. Got a couple of battle replays for you. This time it's going to be a couple times I'm going to bring Chaos. Chaos is not one of the better factions in multiplayer, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what wins and loses you battles in Total War Warhammer. So there's a few things to know about the game, and I'm going to kind of be talking about these things as we get you... Check out this amazing miss micro where my guys turned around for some weird reason. Fortunately, I got it corrected fairly quick here. There we go. But yeah, so let's check out my army. So my army's 5 Forsaken, 5 Chaos Warriors, and I think a few Chaos Marauders. He's got a Blood Knight hidden over here that I didn't see originally. A few Skeleton Warriors playing meat up front. 1 Bat, and he's basically got his own version of the Death Star, Necromancer next to Van Karstein. So the Death Star doesn't have to be the exact same units you see every time. You can do it with other units, and that's part of what makes the vampires so dangerous, is that any number of combinations is deadly from them. He's got plenty of anti-armor to work with here, which is going to be good for him. What is this? Oh, I Spirit Leeched him. Yeah, a lot of good it's going to do me. He heals a lot of the damage back pretty quickly because the Necromancer's right next to him. I bring in Kolek, and I'm going to immediately start pounding stuff. And I'm going to go ahead and just go straight into the vampires with my Forsaken. Now the Forsaken are going to do a huge amount of damage, but the thing that can make vampires very, very strong is the combinations. The Crypt Horrors right now are absolutely debilitating my men. Their poison drags down my attack something fierce, and it makes my men much less effective. Now Graveguard Great Weapons, they can hold up quite a bit, but I've got a line of Forsaken backed up by Chaos Warriors and with Kolek Suneater hammering away at the vampires. But you can see here that the Invocation of Nehek, no, hang on, what is it here? The Macabre spell and Red Fury are underway. Let's see what comes next. I used Soul Blight on his men to try and tear them down a little bit. But the Invocation of Nehek is underway, so even though I've got the vampires surrounded, for the most part, except for over here where their Blood Knights are about to work me over pretty hard, because I don't have anything to counter them with. Anyway, yeah, I've got the vampires surrounded, but it's not going to matter. The Invocation of Nehek, combined with the regenerative effects, combined with the poison of the Crypt Horrors, meant that this battle was over before it started. Well, Air, what do you mean? It's these two guys together. See, I Spirit Leeched him earlier. He's already recovered easily. I cannot cause enough damage to either the Necromancer or Von Karstein. It just won't happen. There's too many sponges between me and his leadership. I am going to Fate of Buna these Blood Knights and try and pull them down some. Unfortunately, it's not going to be soon enough, as they are going to absolutely wreck my infantry in a rear charge there. Bringing some Forsaken around the flanks as well. I've got my Death Sorcerer trying to be helpful, but I'm running out of Winds of Magic. I had to pull Kolek out of combat because he's just not doing any good. His target was Von Karstein, and you can see Von Karstein's health is completely full, like untouched full. So there's literally nothing I can do to Von Karstein at this point. I bring in a Lightning Strike from Kolek. It's just nothing's budging the vampires here. The regenerative effects are real. You can see the Vargulf just staying completely regenerated. I can't touch it. And that's where one thing to be aware of is that there's certain picks, and I'm not saying this to be bitter, I'm just trying to be educational for those who are not as familiar with Total War Warhammer. There are certain things that will win you a battle and will lose you a battle. Picking Chaos against the vampires, unless the vampire player does something wildly wrong, is an instant loss. And it is okay with me that some factions match up well against others, but the problem is right now that the vampires match up well against absolutely everybody in every scenario pretty much. The vampires have the troops that they need to do absolutely everything, whereas other factions are all gimped in some way or another, with maybe the exception of the Empire, which also is pretty good, but I would still say the vampires are considerably better. But all other factions, like I said, exhibit some weaknesses that you're able to take advantage of. Check this out. The bonus versus large on those Blood Knights, Vargulf, everything else. Colette gets torn down. It's only a matter of time before my remaining Chaos Warriors are brought down. And even though they've gotten a ton of kills and done a ton of damage, it just really doesn't matter. Like I said, the vampire player can just regenerate his troops back to life, which in some ways is kind of cool. You know, that's what a necromancer does, right? They raise the dead, they keep the dead animated. It's just some of the, like Cryptors, for instance. Cryptors regenerate, and then they have poison attacks on top of it. They need to take away one of those, whether it's the poison attacks or the regenerate. That's the problem with the vampires for me, is that they just have everything. They have everything. And now they even have a really good cavalry unit in the form of the Blood Knights. So, in my opinion, the vampires either need to be nerfed, which I think is probably the right way to go, or they're going to have to do something that makes the other factions stronger. Because right now, the vampires are just like... So in this battle, my opponent picked Greenskins. I picked Chaos, which Greenskins are better than Chaos any day of the week. But then my opponent turned around and picked vampires. Well, why did he pick vampires? Well, because it was a quick battle, and yeah, it's possible he wanted to play vampires, but picking vampires against a faction like Chaos in quick battle is a guaranteed win. And in this case, you see that that's definitely the case. I mean, I killed more of his men than he did of mine. It does not matter. He wins because the Invocation in the Heck keeps his guys alive and can actually resurrect them after they've been knocked down. Again, I'm not trying to say that you take away necromancy from the vampires. I understand it's like a faction identity for them. They just, like I said, too many units are too good. Only 800 cost for the Cryptors, and they have poison regeneration. They do massive damage. You've got to take some of that away, or you have to increase the cost to represent what the unit gives you. The unit does massive damage. It poisons the stats of all the other units around it, and it regenerates on top of that. So, I mean, if it cost 14 or 1500, I'd probably be okay with that, but it doesn't. It only costs 800. You can bring 2 or 3 of these things for what the good price would be for one. So even here, without having to get really careful about his pick, the vampire player can bring these units here and pretty easily stay up on top of me. His anti-armor here does well against my infantry, as expected. His meat shield absorbs a lot of hit points and does a little bit of damage, and then these two guys just keep the rest of his army alive. So not a lot that Chaos can do against the vampires, to be honest, not if the players are on the same skill level. Let's show one more battle and we'll talk about it. So it's not just faction that plays into whether or not you'll be successful. It's also your army pick. So this is another match in which, factionally speaking, I'm at a disadvantage with Chaos versus the Empire, period. The Empire is just a better faction. They have a lot more variety. Now, that being said, the second thing I want to talk about isn't just the faction pick, as I mentioned, it's army choice. So, when facing Chaos, you can be assured of a few things. One, there's going to be a lot of armored infantry, so you want to have anti-armor capability. And 2 is there's going to be a lot of infantry, so you better be ready to fight that. Chaos is pretty one-dimensional in the sense that they typically bring a lot of infantry. They can also potentially have some monsters. My opponent here deploys far back and brings Hellstorm rockets. I've got 5 Forsaken again, 2 Chaos Warriors, 1 Marauder, 1 Lore of Fire Wizard, 4 Halberds in case there are Demigryph Knights, and there is 1. And then he's got his own Bright Wizard up here leading up the fight. His infantry is all cruddy infantry that's terrible against armor, and then crossbowmen, which are also not good against armor. So basically his army choice here has guaranteed him a massive struggle. And then there's a couple other things to be aware of. A lot of area of effect spells in this game are pretty underwhelming, except for when you start to do what's going on right here, which is there's a big blob up of Empire units. And his rockets, which excel at blobbed up units, notice that my units are spread all the way across the map. And it's so that it minimizes the effect of his rockets. So I have basically negated his rockets from the very beginning of this battle just by spreading out. So although this may work good in campaign versus the AI, when a player is smart enough to spread out, you're going to be in trouble. See how spread out I am? He puts this flaming head in here, it's going to do very little damage. While on the other hand, watch what happens when I start to lay down some area of effect spells on someone who's really blobbed up in a defensive formation. So just kind of keep an eye on the game here. So now when I drop the flaming head, it's going to go through two units, 3, 4 units, maybe even 5 units. Flaming head's just going to rip through all those units and leave them decimated. My Forsaken is charging his front lines, and Kolek Suneater's getting ready to come in too, while my Halberds work up on the flank. His Demigryph Knights are wrecking a Forsaken, which is unfortunate, but my Marauders or my Halberd units are so slow I'm not going to get there. Once again, his guys remain very blobbed up, so I'm going to use some more area of effect magic, which, again, typically may not be super effective. In this case, is going to be fairly effective. So this Firestorm here really causing some damage. And then on top of that, Kolek Suneater has a lightning spell, and I'm going to bring it into effect. You can see, because his army's all blubbed up, my high damage infantry like the Forsaken are going to get in here and do a ton of damage. His rockets are now heavily negated because they're too close to the action. There comes that spell, and then over here his other rocket's going to take a bombardment. So we'll watch that coming down as well. So yeah, keeping units that are very stationary and very blobbed up is obviously going to open you up to being hammered. You have to think about the you have to think about the faction you're facing and what is the most likely pick from them. So I'm guilty of this a lot, where I'm just tempted to choose armies that are fun, where I just want to use something, and there's nothing wrong with that. But to improve your chances in, say, a quick battle like this one was, where you're playing for rank and stuff, the best thing to do is to think about what has your opponent chosen and what is going to be the best way to potentially counter that. So with Empire against Chaos, there's going to be plenty of infantry on the field for Chaos. So one good thing to do, especially when you have stuff like Forsaken, which is a good damage dealer for Chaos, instead of bringing Spearmen, which are going to do no damage to any Chaos infantry of any sort, and same thing with the Swordsmen, just focus your time on something like Empire Knights or Reiksguard or Demigryphs that are going to actually do damage to Chaos units. And then think of maybe something like, the Hellblaster volley gun is going to be a little more effective than rockets if you really want to bring artillery. Handgunners do damage against armor. So, I mean, there's lots of things that the Empire can do that would be more effective versus Chaos. So let's just go take a look, and I'll kind of give you an idea what I'm talking about. So like if I was going to play against Chaos, I know I'm going to be up against armor and infantry. So like I said, I'm going to want to bring things that help me against that. So Demigryph Knights with lances are very good against infantry. Reiksguard are a very cost-effective anti-infantry unit. Even Empire Knights do a pretty darn good job versus infantry. So, and the price on them isn't that bad. Outriders, you have to be careful with these guys. They are very hard to ever make effective, and I'm not sure that I would really recommend them here. But say, for instance, a unit like the Grenade Launcher, this unit could potentially be used well against Chaos, assuming Chaos doesn't show up with Warhounds, which they could, and you'll have to beware of that. But, I mean, like I said, this Hellblaster volley gun, it's good against armor if you just really wanted to bring artillery, but I wouldn't recommend a lot of artillery. Just because it's going to leave you stationary, and you're going to have to blob up to protect it. So, like I said, just think about the best options. Great swords are anti-armor. Halberds are anti-armor. Both of these are more expensive, though, so you got to watch out. Like I said, you'd want to have infantry support. So, again, if you're looking at anti-armor with some holding power, a combination of Halberds and Empire Knights would be fairly potent. You could still get your Karl Franz maybe up on the Griffin if you really want, and you still have some money for a light wizard. You could just go ahead and stick him on a warhorse. So you could do something more like this, where everything you have is anti-armor, and anti-infantry, as opposed to, something that isn't. And like I said, the halberds will do a lot more damage versus large and armored units. So if you look at the armor piercing, it's 19, which isn't bad. Let's see what a greatsword looks like in terms of armor piercing, 23. So the halberd's a little less, but obviously with a lot less. Well, the melee attack's 30 there. What is it on the halberd? It's 25, yeah. So there is a difference between the two. But I don't know, just to give you an idea, this army, I'm not saying it would be successful every time, but this would be a more anti-chaos type army since it's focused against infantry and armor. So again, just a few thoughts. Hope you all enjoyed this. Leave your own thoughts in the comments. Tell me what you think. How do you like to choose armies? How do you like to choose factions? How do you try and outthink your opponent before you go into battle? Do you plan on strategy, or do you just mainly plan countering your opponent? HeirofCarthage signing out. I'll see you all next time.